As my husband and I stepped out of the car, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law directed their attention to him. "Hey, Caleb," they exclaimed, "what's the deal with this car? It's absolutely incredible. We're thrilled you've chosen to embrace our lifestyle, but buying such a lavish car out of the blue is quite a bold move." My husband chuckled and responded, "Actually, this isn't my car. It belongs to Samantha's father." Simultaneously, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law reacted with surprise, saying, "What?" Just as my parents emerged from the vehicle, my in-laws were left utterly astonished by their appearance. "That suit looks so expensive," they marveled. "And I've definitely seen that outfit before, it's from a top-notch brand. Why are Samantha's parents dressed so extravagantly?" Let me introduce myself. I'm Samantha, a 28-year-old office worker. I tied the knot with Caleb, my husband, last year. Throughout our time together, Caleb has always been incredibly kind and attentive, ensuring my well-being. Marrying him brought me immense happiness. We both contribute to the household chores since we're both working professionals. Caleb, who had lived independently for a significant period, excels in handling household tasks. Depending on what's on the menu, he can even outdo me in the kitchen. We support each other wholeheartedly, leading a blissful life together. However, there are individuals who pose challenges to our harmonious married life, my in-laws. They make unfounded assumptions about my financial situation and seem to take liberties with their comments. I often wonder why they hold this perception of me. It likely stems from a dinner party we hosted to introduce our families before our wedding. My in-laws comprise 4 members, my parents-in-law, my sister-in-law, and, of course, my husband. My father-in-law had enjoyed a prosperous career as a banker, and his wardrobe bore witness to his affluence, boasting designer labels at every turn. They seem to equate wearing expensive items with a status symbol. Interestingly, my husband was the outlier in his family when it came to such matters. He had a penchant for purchasing second-hand clothes online, wearing them proudly until he believed they had surpassed their original value. Consequently, during my initial encounter with my in-laws, I encountered personalities and tastes that sharply contrasted with my husband's. At times, I even found myself pondering if my husband might have been adopted, considering how incongruous his values appeared compared to the rest of his family. It became apparent that my husband's proclivity for independence began during his college years, largely driven by his differing values from his family's fixation on wealth as the ultimate virtue. Their belief in material affluence was so strong that it cast him as the outlier in their midst. I harbored a less than favorable impression of my in-laws after our first meeting. My father, on the other hand, owns a small factory, which, upon discovery, became a subject of ridicule for my in-laws and sister-in-law. They questioned the financial standing of a factory with a name unfamiliar to them, doubting its eligibility for a loan from the large bank where I worked. Their audacity to make such disparaging remarks during our initial meeting left me questioning their character. I would have been incensed if my husband hadn't preemptively apologized to me. Fortunately, my husband had apprised my parents of the situation beforehand, which helped them maintain their composure in the face of my in-laws' mockery. It was true that we managed a small business, but we were grateful for our ability to sustain it, pay our employees, and keep it running smoothly. Their curiosity about our business and the number of employees we had did little to ease the tension. Then came the inquiry about my older brother. "Oh, our son is working today," my father replied. "He won't be able to join us, he's currently unavailable." The ensuing question about my brother's employment led to an unexpected revelation. "Our son works for my company," my father proudly declared. This disclosure prompted synchronized laughter from my in-laws, an unspoken commentary on the stark contrasts in our family backgrounds. "Is it a family business?" they inquired, skepticism lacing their words. "A family that can't even take a day off must not be running the business very well," they continued, persisting in their disparaging comments about my family. My husband repeatedly urged them to cease their derogatory remarks, but they remained obstinate. Eventually, it was my husband who took it upon himself to put an end to their hurtful words. This ongoing behavior is what has shaped my unfavorable view of my in-laws. Regrettably, they didn't stop at poking fun at my family, they also targeted my husband's family background. In truth, such circumstances might lead some to reconsider their marriage, but my love for my husband transcended these challenges, so I chose to stand by his side. As long as I could avoid direct involvement with my in-laws, I believed we could continue to lead a peaceful and content life. Interestingly, my husband shared my sentiments about his own family. Frustrated by their behavior towards my family and theirs, we distanced ourselves from them and visited only when absolutely necessary. However, approximately a year into our marriage, they seemingly grew weary of our avoidance and began to exert pressure on us to reconnect. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law started visiting our home frequently, wielding their words without restraint. "Caleb hardly ever comes home," they would assert, insinuating that I was the reason for his absence, driven by jealousy over their seemingly superior lifestyle. I couldn't help but notice the condescending tone they adopted. While I didn't hold it against them, as we clearly had different standards of living, it did little to foster goodwill. They also broached the topic of starting a family, suggesting that if we didn't produce an heir, their accusations might hold some truth about our motivations. These unwelcome visits typically occurred within the short 3-hour window between my return from work and my husband's late arrival, due to his overtime commitments. During this time, their criticisms extended to our modest apartment, insinuating that, given my husband's employment with a reputable company, we should be residing in a more luxurious dwelling. However, my husband and I remained content with our current living situation, finding it perfectly suited to our needs. "You mean it's not your husband, but you, right? Please don't impose your values on Caleb," they insisted, a condescending tone threading their words. As they scrutinized our refrigerator contents, they commented, "There's a lot of plain stuff in here. Don't peek inside without permission. No caviar or fine wines. We don't keep those luxuries." "Oh, how dull. Why did Caleb marry someone like you? A woman who's poor, rich, and boring all at once is a rare find." I mustered a response. "You could say that, but any attempt to touch her finances, even in the slightest, will bring consequences. We'll take appropriate action." Your threats and taunts, accompanied by laughter, would follow as my mother-in-law and sister-in-law eventually left. I confided in my husband about their behavior, and he reprimanded them, yet they persisted in their unrelenting visits without a hint of remorse. They would ambush me in my apartment upon my return, casting a cloud of depression over my homecoming. I wondered how they could possibly grow tired of tormenting me. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law seemed determined to harass me relentlessly, and the emotional toll was taking its toll. Desperate for relief, I began passing the time in a cafe until my husband finished work, only returning home when he could accompany me. However, upon seeing me return home with my husband, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would taunt me further, accusing me of infringing on Caleb's freedom. Their persistence was exemplified by the 3-hour wait outside my apartment, a time they apparently relished in trying to distress me. My husband, thoroughly disgusted by their actions, went to the extent of seeking assistance from my father-in-law. When my husband discussed the matter with my father-in-law, his response mirrored my mother-in-law's sentiments. He echoed their belief that a financially less fortunate woman was an anomaly in their world. The continued strife posed a threat to our marriage, and I realized it was time for me to consider a last resort, an action I didn't particularly relish. A few days later, my husband and I decided to pay a visit to my in-laws. They greeted us with enthusiasm when we informed them that my husband was bringing his wife along. I recoiled in horror upon hearing my mother-in-law's disturbing remark, "I'm so delighted to finally see Samantha after such a long time. I can't imagine how enjoyable it is to be the wife of a beater." One weekend, we made a trip to my mother-in-law's house. As we arrived in our car at my in-laws' residence, they eagerly rushed out to greet us. Excitement brimmed in their voices as they asked my husband, "Hey Caleb, what's the story with this car? It's incredible. We're thrilled you've chosen to align with our lifestyle. But isn't it quite a bold move to acquire such a luxurious car out of the blue?" Amused, my husband responded to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, "Actually, this isn't my car. It belongs to Samantha's father." Simultaneously, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law exclaimed, "What?" It was then that my parents alighted from the car, dressed in attire that left my in-laws utterly astounded. They couldn't help but remark on my parents' impeccable, high-end attire. Why do her parents wear such extravagant clothing, they wondered aloud. The atmosphere took another turn as my brother emerged from the car, standing tall and exuding a model-like presence. Clad in a similar high-end brown suit as my father, his arrival caused my sister-in-law's eyes to change color. A sense of amazement washed over my in-laws as they beheld my transformed family, a stark contrast from their previous encounter. My husband, observing their reactions, couldn't help but question their behavior, urging them to promptly show my family around the house. In a flurry, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law rushed to invite my family inside. They ushered them into the living room and assured them, "We'll prepare some tea for you right away." Their attitude had done a complete about-face. Suddenly, my in-laws were brimming with curiosity, posing questions to my parents, particularly about their choice of luxurious clothing. My father responded to their queries, "My factory may be small, but the parts we manufacture hold the world's sole patent. We receive orders from prominent Japanese and international companies alike. My father's explanation left my in-laws flustered, their faces tinged with a shade of blue. Gradually, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law began to adopt a friendlier demeanor towards me. Throughout this transformation, my father-in-law remained silent, offering no comments or reactions. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law showed a keen interest in my brother and engaged in extensive conversation with him. "What kind of work do you do in your father's company?" she inquired, her English proficiency shining through. My brother responded, "I'm currently responsible for organizing business meetings with overseas companies. Consequently, I spend about half of the year abroad." Impressed, my sister-in-law commented, "That's quite impressive. Are you single, Daniel?" My brother replied, "No, I'm married." To this, she expressed her disappointment, suggesting, "That's a shame. But I believe I might be a better match for you than your wife. What do you think? Perhaps we could go out for dinner?" In front of me and my parents, my sister-in-law proceeded to make advances towards my married brother. To be frank, I admired her audacity and unwavering confidence. However, I had resolved to challenge my sister-in-law in my own way. My brother exchanged a glance with me, his agreement evident. My brother responded to her advances with humor, saying, "Me, with an ordinary girl like you? Are you kidding me, Daniel?" He continued, "You're quite the amusing character. Are you seriously suggesting that you're more desirable than my wife? My wife is a former model, highly educated, and the daughter of the president of a renowned company. By any measure, you're in no way her equal." My brother's words hit the mark, and my sister-in-law found herself in a bewildered state, on the brink of speechlessness. The shock she experienced rendered her incapable of response. Finally, my father addressed our extended family. "Regardless of how affluent another family may be, money is undoubtedly significant. However, one's worth cannot be solely measured by wealth. Let us remember our humanity and not be consumed by materialism." "I apologize for our earlier discourtesy," my father concluded, bowing his head as a sign of reconciliation. My in-laws were visibly shaken and quickly bowed to my father. From that point on, they never attempted to bully me again. In fact, they began reaching out to me regularly, showering me with flattery. While their constant contact could sometimes be a bit annoying, it marked a stark departure from their previous behavior. It's worth noting that neither my parents nor my brother are the type to flaunt luxury brands or boast about their wealth. They simply cooperated with my plan on that occasion. My father prefers his long-held, modestly priced suit over luxury attire and has no interest in extravagance. My brother, characterized by his kindness and lack of mockery, is well liked by his in-laws, to the extent that they've even considered him as a potential successor to their company over their eldest son. I deeply regret putting my family through an unfamiliar situation, and everyone was quite exhausted on the way back. Nonetheless, this event allowed me to return to a peaceful married life with my husband. Since then, I haven't visited my in-laws, but my husband still visits them, especially during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Following this event, my in-laws have undergone a transformation. It appears they've lost their confidence or perhaps experienced genuine remorse. They no longer boast about their wealth as they once did. My husband even shares that he feels most comfortable around them now, though we remain cautious about the possibility of them reverting to their old ways. For the time being, I'm just relieved that the problem has been successfully resolved. I intend to continue caring for my husband and family, living a humble life. It's clear that the other family member, who remained humble despite their substantial wealth, made far more money than my in-laws ever did. They should be ashamed of their previous behavior, as consistently belittling the less fortunate only reflects poorly on one's character. True affluence doesn't involve such actions. I appreciate that you recognize the importance of giving my in-laws a stern talking to. My hope is that we can continue to live in harmony with our family every day.